welcome to Cooking on the Side, and today we are making a country loaf of bread. Now this recipe is very simple and easy to follow, so let's begin. In a large mixing bowl, we are adding 560 grams of all-purpose flour and 190 grams of whole wheat flour. You can see that I'm using a kitchen scale, which I highly recommend for a more accurate result, not just for this recipe, but for every baking recipe really. Anyways, before adding water to the flour, make sure to evenly mix the all-purpose and the wheat flour. After mixing, add 562.5 grams of warm water. This is not a requirement, but if you want to be more precise, the water needs to be at about 98 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Otherwise, warm water will work. I like to use my hands while combining the dough just so I can get a feel of it on each stage, but you can also use a spatula for easier cleanup later. At this stage, we are not kneading the dough. We just want to make sure that all flour and the water are incorporated, and there should be no dry flour left over. The next step is called autolysis, which is basically letting the mixture sit for about 20 minutes to an hour to let the flour absorb the water. This is where gluten starts to develop and strengthen. You can see this by pulling on the dough before autolysis, and it breaks apart pretty easily like on the video. So I'm going to cover and let it sit for an hour. Then after an hour, when I pull the dough, it's now stretchier, which means gluten has started to develop. Okay, so next I am going to add 3 grams of instant yeast on one side and 15 grams of salt on the other side. We always want to make sure to separate the yeast and the salt until it is time to mix them in with the dough, just because the salt might kill the yeast. I am basically just stretching the dough and folding it onto itself, but I don't really have a technique. Just do what you gotta do to mix the yeast and the salt in. This usually takes me about 2 to 3 minutes of mixing. A tip for mixing the dough, just because the dough is very sticky, you can dip your hands on water when you handle it to reduce how much it sticks on your hands. Once the salt and yeast are mixed in, I kind of just form the dough into a ball, cover it with a kitchen towel, and let it rest for 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, we are going to do the first of our 2 folds. By folding, I mean reaching in to the bottom on one side of your dough with your palm and slowly stretch the dough as far as you can go without breaking it, and then folding it over. Rotate the bowl and then repeat this process for all the sides, and then after that, cover the bowl and let it rest for 1 hour. It's the same process for the second fold, but during the second fold you will notice that some air bubbles are forming, which means the yeast is doing its job. After the second fold, you're gonna have to cover the bowl again and let it rest for 1.5 to 2 hours this time. While waiting for the dough to rise, I am preparing some bread baskets to help shape the dough into 2 oval-shaped breads, but you can most definitely use the same bowl if you don't have one of these. But if you already have one of these, make sure that these are floured so the dough does not stick to the lining on the basket. After 2 hours, my dough has now doubled or tripled in size with bigger air bubbles, and we are now ready to shape the dough. This part is totally optional. You can literally shape your dough into a ball, but for this video, I am dividing mine into 2 using a bench knife, which I am going to flour as well to prevent the dough from sticking. In this step, I am just pre-shaping the dough into a ball with the help of my bench knife by scooping from the right and sort of turning counterclockwise until the dough has a round shape. It doesn't need to be pretty. Remember that this is just the pre-shaping step. After pre-shaping, make sure to lightly flour the top surface of the dough as we will be flipping this upside down for our final shaping. And also, I'm just trying to pop some big bubbles that form to remove any excess air in my dough. So now that I'm ready for shaping, I flip the dough and very carefully stretch the sides. And then I fold from top to the center, and then fold from left side to the center, and then from the right side to the center, and again fold from the bottom to the center. Lastly, I just kind of roll the dough just like how you would roll a burrito, tightly but very, very carefully. After shaping, I just place the dough in one of the bread baskets with the seam side up. I made sure to seal the seam and flour and set it aside for the next dough, which I'm basically just repeating the same folding process. After shaping both doughs, just cover them with a kitchen towel and let it rest for its final proofing for an hour to an hour and a half. While waiting for my doughs to proof, I am preparing my combo cooker for preheating. You can also use a Dutch oven because the idea is you want the steam in the initial stages of baking in order to have a nice and brown crust in the end. I am going to place the combo cooker in the oven and set it to 500 degrees for at least an hour. Once it is ready, take it out, but be careful because it's going to be scorching hot. Next, you're going to want to flour the narrower side and flour the dough and quickly score it right in the middle with a sharp knife or a bread lame. It should be about a half to 1 inch deep. After that, put the lid on and place it back in 500 degrees oven for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, take the combo cooker out and remove the lid off and quickly place it back in the oven and lower the oven temperature to 450 degrees Fahrenheit and bake it for another 15 minutes. For the second dough, you just basically want to ensure to set the oven at 500 degrees Fahrenheit back up again and wait for 15 minutes to preheat and repeat the same procedure. That's pretty much it. After almost an entire day of work, I now have 2 nice loaves of bread for my family to enjoy Just make sure to let it sit on the cooling rack for about an hour before slicing, but that's really it. This process is incredibly easy and simple. It just takes a bit of time, but as the saying goes, good things take time. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. If you have any comments or suggestions for our future videos, please leave us a comment. Until then, see you next time.